Why is healthy masculinity development being so distorted in our young men today? Well, today, in this episode, we're going to unpack it. We're going to look at the comparison game. We're going to look at the dopamine effect. We're going to look at instant gratification and why social media is such a huge driver in affecting our young men in today's world. G'day guys, if we haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name is Andrew, and for the last 28 years, I've had the pleasure of coaching and helping and assisting men and families to be healthy and successful and at their best. Even more than that, I'm a father myself. I've got 2 children, and recently I've just seen my daughter go through the end of her schooling. She's 18, and together we've survived the social media jungle. Today, I want to show you how we did it. We're talking about what is distorting the healthy development of masculinity in our young men. Now, it's important right off the top that we redefine, as we always do on this channel, what we're actually talking about when we use the word masculinity. We're talking about protection, provision, and empowerment. And with that in mind, we've got to ask the question, why do we seem to be doing so poorly in raising our young men, our boys, our teens and our young adults into what we would regard to be healthy masculinity? Let me throw a few statistics at you that are really quite disconcerting. Here they are. 19 males go to prison for every 1 female. 98% of all sexual assaults are committed by males. 90% of robberies are committed by males. 92% of abductions are committed by males. 87% of homicides are committed by males. And in Australia today, an average of 9 people per day will die by suicide. 7 of those will be men. Here's a very alarming statistic, as if the others weren't. 1 woman is killed nearly every week in Australia as a result of family violence. Clearly, when you hear those statistics, we are not doing anywhere near a good enough job in raising our young men to be healthy, masculine men. And in this little mini-series, I'm talking about the factors why that is the case. I recently did an episode talking about the impact of fatherlessness. Today's episode, I'm talking about the impact of social media on our boys, teens, and our young adults, because it is playing a significant role in what's going on in the development of our young men, and particularly the development of healthy or unhealthy masculinity in those same young men. We've got to understand and realise that in the last 15 years or so, the world has shifted dramatically. The presence of social media has upended how we view the world, how we interact with the world, how we view other people, how we talk to people. The change has been seismic. And the pressure against families and parents has gone up exponentially as we've tried to navigate these waters of what to do about raising our young people in an environment where social media is so dominant. All these platforms where so much exposure is available, from Facebook to Instagram to TikTok to Snapchat, you name it. There are so many opportunities for our young people to be exposed to stuff that is not always great for them. In fact, I can remember coaching my own daughter, who just recently turned 18. I remember sitting down with her when she got her first smartphone. And I drew up a basic but very clear contract, if you like, with her. And I had been prepping her about this for months and months because, like most new teens, she was asking, when can I have a phone, and all the rest of this. And so we had been talking about the idea that the phone was a responsibility, not a privilege, not a right. And with responsibility comes her part of the agreement. And so I remember writing out this agreement with her and asking her to agree and asking her to have input on the agreement. And in that contract, we basically agreed that if I was going to buy her a phone and pay for her monthly bill, and I'm pleased to say that just last month, as she turned 18 and came into a new year, the mobile phone bill is her bill to pay now, not mine anymore, because she's an adult. But back when she was 12, we drew up a contract and we talked about how she needed to interact with that technology, with social media especially. We gave her a rule that she would only have Instagram to start with, because I wanted to see if she could prove herself trustworthy with what she was doing with that interaction as an immature, not fully developed person emotionally or mentally with all of that exposure. She did ask for Snapchat. We said no. She asked for some other things. We said no. We said, show us your trustworthiness with one social media platform. And part of her agreement before we gave her the phone was she had to give us her login so that if we wanted to log in and check what she was doing, we could. Now, I only checked it once ever because she proved herself trustworthy, showing her responsibility with that technology, and it has proven to be quite a seamless and smooth pathway, but that's not the case for a lot of households. It becomes a very challenging thing, and the presence of social media has become an increasing challenge as it pertains to the development of our young men. One of the big issues we've got with social media is the hectic pressure around the comparison game. Our young men are seeing so many other people's lives, and as is the case with social media, pretty well everybody only ever presents their best image, their highlight reel, as it were, their great moments, their most exciting experiences, and nothing else. And it's not really a real world. One of the little apps that's always given me a chuckle is the app and the platform called Be Real. You might have heard of it. It's an app where users are prompted once or twice a day to take a photo or a short video right then in that moment doing whatever they're doing. And I get the intent of it, trying to promote the idea of don't fake it, show us what you're really doing, but still the pressure to present a highlight in that moment is so immense on our young people because they are by nature heavily invested in their image at that time of their development. And so very few people are going to post about, I'm having a bad day, I'm struggling, here are my weak points, here are my flaws, this is why I'm not happy with my growth. There's so much pressure to present a great image. And the image that our young men are seeing online of other men and young men is not always great. Often it's purely to do with surface things like how physically attractive can they get? How muscular can they get by training? How much money can they get? The kids love to use these words like how much riz have they got? And all this kind of stuff. And it's actually not wrong in and of itself, but in the absence of internal character development, it's super unhealthy for them. And so the comparison game is a huge problem for our young men, that they're watching other people's highlight reel, comparing it to their own reality, and they're seeing the disparagement and thinking that their own life is horrible and it's doing detrimental things to their development. Here's another factor when it comes to social media, and that is the availability of what is essentially soft pornography. We've got this horrendously dangerous and unhealthy dynamic going on in social media these days where many women, not all women, but many women, especially young women, believe that the fastest pathway to success in life is proportionate to how much of your clothing you will take off. Now, young men, being visual creatures by design, of course, are going to be drawn to this and attracted to it. And so those young women get lots of likes, lots of follows, which then can turn into monetization opportunities. And before you know it, they can go shopping, they can buy a nice car, they can maybe even buy a house at a young age. And on the surface, it seems successful. But at its root, it's prostitution. Really is what it comes down to. And these young men are being trained progressively that there's no problem with it. If a girl's taken all her clothes off and posting online, well, that's her problem. But actually, everybody is a co-conspirator in this unhealthy mechanism and practice that's going on, where young men have got early, unhealthy, unhelpful access to sexualized images and soft pornography just on the social media platforms, let alone what else they can get access to. And it is doing horrendous and destructive damage to the development of masculinity in their internal world. Here's another problem that we see in social media with our young men: the glorification of money. We see people throwing wads of cash. We see them just taking photos in front of expensive cars, even if they don't belong to them. We see them trying to present the high life, and the inferred correlation is more money equals more happiness. Well, that has never been a binding correlation that just because you're richer, you're happier. You can be, but they're not correlating factors. But our young men, in their immaturity, in their inability to properly process that emotionally and mentally, they are correlating that a money life is a good life. But actually, like somebody once said, sometimes it's just more money, more problems. And that's the truth of where a lot of young men are getting themselves to, because they're ignoring the long-standing stuff, the evergreen stuff, which is internal life, which is character, which is ethics, which is values, which is family, which is relationships. That stuff is getting pushed to the side as if it didn't matter, and our young men are being lured and seduced by this carrot of a life full of money, and therefore you'll have made it, and that's all that matters. It is not helping them, it's harming them tremendously. Another thing we see going on in social media today that's affecting our young men is the false promise of the have anything life. Because of the immediacy of technology and the internet and social media and people that you never used to even know existed on the planet, even some of the celebrities that we've all got so much access to these days, because we've got access to all these pockets of the world and millions of people's lives, there is a false promise that comes through social media that says, as long as you can manifest hard enough, you can have anything you want in life. And actually, it's a false promise. It is not a conclusive, holistic promise that anybody can have anything. The world we live in throws curveballs all the time. There are potholes that we fall into. There are mistakes that we make. There are difficult seasons that come, but the promise of social media is, as long as you can see it, you can have it. And the truth is, not even if it were achievable would it necessarily present a successful, healthy, enjoyable life. But that's the false promise that's coming to our young men. And a lot of what I've just covered here, all like multiple rivers, pours into the one cesspool, if you like, of mental health issues, without a shadow of a doubt. And thankfully, research and data, clinical work is finally starting to catch up with what we've all felt was true for such a long time, and that is that the impact of social media and these various little details that I've just covered are adding significantly to the mental health battle that our young men are having when they're playing the comparison game, when they're spending their time pursuing a life of hedonism instead of character development, etc., etc. It's sending them into a spiral of depression and anxiety that many of them find difficult to emerge from. Here's one for parents. Here's one for you dads. Social media coming into your home, into the lives of your sons and your daughters. We're talking about young men particularly today. You are allowing, if you're not careful, unwanted voices in the ears and the hearts of your young men. I recently watched, as many of you might have seen, this clip from an Andrew Tate video. Most of us know the reputation and the story of Andrew Tate, and here's my short, brief take on Andrew Tate. He's a bit of an enigma because some of the things he says are actually good and useful, like get it off your screens and get out of your bedroom and go to the gym and get fit. Great, got no problem with it. But he also talks about polygamy as not being a problem, and women are the possession of men, no big deal. And she should serve all of your needs, and who cares if this and that and the other. There's a lot of negative, bad stuff that comes out of a voice like Andrew Tate. And recently he filmed this video where a clip went very, very viral of him basically challenging us dads, essentially calling us to a verbal showdown and coming at us saying the reason your sons don't want anything to do with you, and the reason, he went as far as to say the reason they want to get rid of you as their dad and they'd rather have me as their dad is because I'm successful and all of you dads are just a bunch of bitches. This is the language that comes out of this man, and he actually believes the stuff he's saying. Dads, you cannot afford to stand by and be idle in the presence of social media in your home and allow a voice like that to twist the thinking of the young men in your home. You have to be a dominant voice in their life. As far as I'm concerned, there's no way on planet Earth in 1,000 lifetimes Andrew Tate is going to be the chief influence in the life of my son. Andrew Gray is going to be the chief influence in my young son's life. and he loves it, and we both share the joy and love of a great father-son relationship. I'm not going to allow unwanted voices in the ears of my children, but they are out there by the dozen and by the hundred, and you've got to do your research to know who they are and what to do about it. It's a huge factor. Let me give you a couple more in today's episode about how social media is distorting the development of healthy masculinity in our young men. Here's a big one. Social media is teaching our young men that there is no such thing as delayed gratification. If you can see it, you can have it. See a woman, take a woman. See some money, get some money. See a car you like, have that car in no time. This constant, false, deceitful promise about see it and have it is short-circuiting what used to be valued as an important trait, and that is delayed gratification, to work steadily and consistently for your results and your rewards. Well, today's world, largely through social media, is completely snuffing that out. And it's a big problem, because what we are seeing is we're seeing probably the generation in all the history of mankind who have the lowest levels of resilience. Unfortunately, we're seeing young people who should otherwise be very motivated, very opportunistic about how blessed they already are, making complaints about how they don't have enough safe spaces and how they need their mum or their dad to come and talk to their boss because their boss required them to do their job. The resilience levels are at an all-time low, and one of the chief contributing factors is young people have been taught to ignore delayed gratification and instead embrace instant gratification. Now, we're all the same. I would be the same as you. We would be the same as all of these young men and young people we're talking about. If it were true that you could just have the life that you see instantly, of course we'd all choose it. But those of us who are living in reality know that that's not reality, and it's actually not even what's best for us. That's why I recently did a mini-series on the channel called Do Difficult Things. It's so important for the development of manhood and masculinity that our young men stop fearing and stop pushing away difficulty in their life, but learn to embrace it and build resilience. But social media is teaching them that they can have instant gratification. Let me give you one more. We have a serious problem neurochemically with the dopamine effect that goes on with social media. Now, I don't need to be the expert for you on this subject. There are people who are better trained and better researched than I am. One of the most popular ones is Dr. Andrew Huberman, who talks about this kind of thing all the time. Dads, mums, parents, you should do your research about this. The dopamine effect of social media on our young men, where they are constantly looking for tiny little micro hits, where they refresh and scroll and refresh and scroll, waiting for the next like, the next follow, the next juicy piece of data and imagery to present itself on the screen in the palm of their hand. It's doing an incredibly damaging job to the release of dopamine in the brain, where literally our young people are getting obsessed and addicted to micro hits of dopamine. And it's throwing their systems out of whack, it's throwing their metabolism out of whack, it's throwing their sleep patterns out of whack, and so we're getting this epidemic of tiredness and sleeplessness in the classroom and in the workplace, and it's coming from this super damaging, this sabotaging effect of dopamine micro hits from social media platforms. You really need to do some research and check that one out. It's quite frightening what that's doing to the development of brain anatomy, let alone the development of healthy masculinity in our young men. I read a stat recently about the fact that 20 years ago, a 60-year-old man was measured on average to have the same testosterone levels as today's 20-year-old. A 60-year-old 20 years ago, same average testosterone levels as today's 20-year-old. Something is wrong. Testosterone levels are not meant to diminish in men in their 20s. They should be rising and healthy and well managed. But we are seeing a massive decline. We're seeing a decline in the development of healthy masculinity. And we've got to understand why. We've got to have a passion for doing something about it. And as dads, as mums, one of the key things we can do is manage social media in your home. Don't give in to that peer pressure. Don't give in to that cry that often happens, oh, but my friends, but my friends, but my friends. You get one shot at parenting your children when they're young. You cannot afford to blow it with giving them free license on social media. I guarantee you will regret it. That's about all we got time for in today's episode. I hope you can join me in another episode in this mini-series real soon, where we're going to talk about the effect of pornography on the healthy development of masculinity in our young men. I'll see you in that video real soon.